So I was at a playground on the weekend with my son, and I was just observing the space and the equipment there, and it made me just think about playgrounds generally. And there was actually a really interesting article from ABC News about a playground in Queensland being quite risky, and it made me think, it's probably a good thing to bring to the podcast to talk about risk-taking playgrounds and how to find that balance.
Yeah, support that in a safe way. That sounds good.
So let's talk about it. Hello and welcome to the Integration Station. I'm your host, Michael, a child and adolescent occupational therapist, and with me today is Eleanor.
I'm also a child and adolescent occupational therapist.
Got our sillies out?
I hope so. No guarantees though.
Yeah, lots of laughing before the show. And hopefully that's just an indication of the fun we find in learning about how to support the young people in our lives. And if you do have any questions, please send them through to podcast@otfcgroup.au, which is our email address. A bit all quiet on the question front this week, but that's okay. You like that one? I've been saving that all week. All quiet on the question front. Yeah. For those who don't know, it's a spit on All Quiet on the Western Front. Great book and story. Anyway. So if you did have any questions, yes, there's the email. Otherwise, we have TikTok or Instagram.
Yeah.
You can OTFC group that. Get a bit of PD in your pocket, as you say.
Absolutely.
Rather than questions this week, we might start with our regular segments.
Which is Therapy Activity of the Week. You've got a spin this week, I hear.
It's Therapy Activity of the Week. We're going to do something a little bit different this week. For all those, we got some feedback that maybe there could be a bit of randomisation. So
From you?
From me.
Talking to yourself in the mirror in the morning?
Yeah. And I thought, why don't we do a bit of a wheel of names? Lots of people know wheel of names. And let's give it a spin, see how we go.
Therapy Activity of the Week.
Michael, before you spin the wheel, do you want to say what you're doing here?
So wheel of names, for those who don't know, is a giant spinning wheel, and it's got a whole bunch of names, and wherever the arrow lands after the wheel has finished spinning is the name or the, in our case, category we're going to talk about.
So you just plugged in Wheel of Names, you just Googled it, and it's the first one that comes up.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It was very big during COVID times.
Yeah, I actually use this heaps in like teletherapy sessions during COVID.
The heaps of stuff.
Trying to get some different activities going. So it's a good one to have in your toolbox.
So we're going to have two wheels. One is a range of different therapy-based equipment.
Yep.
So ones we'd see in the space quite regularly. And the second is performance components. So things like things that with our body are strength, endurance, hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
And we thought what we'd do is we'd spin the wheel for a piece of equipment and spin the wheel for a performance component, and we can help our listeners generate some ideas about how they can combine one thing with something else.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, ready to spin?
Ready to spin.
All right, I'll do the first one. Ooh, platform swing.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to use
Love
the platform swing. And what sort of activity are we going to, what area of the motor systems and sensory motor systems are we going to focus on? Problem solving on the platform swing.
Okay.
So problem solving on the platform swing. One thing I have actually done, and it's not necessarily the swing itself, not an activity on the swing, it's actually setting up the platform swing. So
yeah.
The problem solving component for me, I've got one client who after, months and months of working through setting up the mats and setting things up for him to engage at the start of our session, I got him to, eventually assist me with setting the swing up.
Yeah.
And that is clipping the suspension points from a part in the space, bringing all the ropes down, getting the swing out, and actually figuring out how to undo the carabiners, hook up the swing. And we use a platform swing a lot. So just, when the two things got together there, reminded me of the amount of time we would spend setting up how to put the platform swing on, clip it onto the carabiner, clip it onto the hooks, and then lock it in place and get it ready to go, and then adjusting it with the pulley system that we have to a height that was conducive to the activity we're undertaking. So there was a fair bit of problem solving involved there in that activity, but because we were doing it quite repetitively, there's an element of, I guess, memory and that rote learning there. So initially there was a lot of, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
Someone else do it for me. I'm so used to someone else doing it for me that when the prompt was, well, can you hook it up yourself, there was a reliance of, or how much was I observing Michael setting it up? Can I remember some of the things he did when I'm doing it, which he was able to, but other parts was like, I'm not quite sure what to do. So we had to practice that. And, you know, for context, this is a, you know, lovely young man, high needs, intellectual disability, but these sort of things are really useful for him because it helps him problem solve and it helps him work through functional tasks in a fun way.
That's so good. I actually, for quite a few of my clients, we always joke that they're like OTs in training because I teach them how to use the pulley systems. We've got set up in our spaces what the OT rules are in terms of the work health and safety. So when we're doing the swing, I'll be like, awesome, like let's check in. And they know the letters that we, you know, use as a bit of a base around, is it secure? Is it the right height? And getting them to take it down and things afterwards too. I think that's an awesome way to sort of build a lot of that problem solving. And there's heaps of fine motor components as well to be able to coordinate, you know, the different aspects too, but it's in a really functional way. And I think they really, you know, I find that lots of my friends really like the opportunity to be helping out and feel really useful in that and, you know, learn a new skill in doing so as well. Yeah, that's awesome. If I was to add another one into that then, I have done an activity in the past where you have the platform swing on the zip line. So it's able to move, you know, it's not just stationary in one spot, it's able to move across a track back and forth. And then having things scattered along the path so that that young person has to work out, you know, how to propel their body along, how to collect it. And if you have them far enough out, they have to work out how to use their arms to swing and generate enough movement and to propel themselves forward so they can go, I guess, outside of the back and forth zip line track to points at either side to be able to collect those items. And you can do it, you know, we were talking about widgets in a previous episode to be able to collect pieces that you need to then build something. You could do it with something like bean bags so that you're trying to collect them to throw into a target like a tunnel, or it skittles around the place as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can bring that in, which is cool.
One of my favorites with problem solving using the platform swing is some of those brain busting games like Rush Hour.
Yeah,
where you have,
that's a good one.
For those who might not know it, it's essentially a little grid and there's a whole bunch of little coloured plastic cars and it's like a gridlocked space and all these cars, you have to try and move the cars around in order to get the red car out of the exit path.
Yeah.
And there's a whole process you do that in. And yeah, a great one to have scattered around. You grab the colours, see if you can remember it, bring it back, and then whilst you're on the platform swing, go through the gridlock itself. So yeah, a good one.
Yeah. So next regular segment, Reg Strat. Let's do it.
Regulation, the strategy of the week.
I've got one for this week, which is using essential oils. Actually, very lucky when I had a massage on the weekend and they had, you know, there was a few points where they would get you to take a few deep breaths as part of it and just like waving the essential oils underneath your nose, which is actually just so calming. And my husband, we went and had one together and he was like, what are they, you know, what's the point of that? I'm like, you know, it's a few deep breaths to help reset your nervous system, get you ready for the process, and the smells to help ground as well. And I often think there's a lovely OT, Val, who often has essential oils on hand and will come past with, you know, her little lavender oil and give that opportunity, and actually is so calming. And I think that's just a really nice one to have in your toolbox. It's super portable that you can bring with you anywhere you need to, and then you can just use it whenever maybe you're feeling like the chance to take a few deep breaths or a scent that you really respond to can just help ground your nervous system a bit.
I know, I think you mentioned in the previous episode about the power of the olfactory system and how it brings up memories, and it ties so closely into our, you know, our alert states and that limbic system. And so essential oils, not just from it smells good and it's, you know, but you know, neurologically it actually really hits parts of the brain that can change and ground people. And it's, I guess the flip side is that it can be quite dysregulating. The reason smells can be so overwhelming for some people is because of how much it targets parts of those brains that impact arousal. So, but yeah, I'm all on board with
just being mindful of the ones that work for you.
Yeah. It reminds me of, it's not so much a regulation strategy, but well, actually no, it is. Sometimes what I do in winter, well beyond, sometimes I get, you know, sort of congested sinuses sinuses, and I can't remember if I've mentioned this before, but the Vicks, the Vicks inhaler, I've probably mentioned it.
No, I just see you with it like a lot.
Yeah, and sometimes beyond winter times because I just like that eucalyptus smell. I don't know if it's reminiscent of, like footy change rooms or something. There's just that deep heat smell. But anyway, it's quite alerting, and it just, I don't know, there's when there's like a purge and it's just like clears everything out in the nose and you just feel really clean after. And even when I don't need to clear the sinuses, it's just a nice smell that I like having. And
same thing for like essential oil, that's what you've got in your toolbox. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's it. And transportable as well. You can screw it on, screw it off.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just a plug for Vicks and other related
just
inhalers.
Your casual product placement for the episode. But a good one.
And a regulation strategy for those that do like to use that.
So suggestions to tap into that olfactory sense
correct.
to meet your sensory needs across your day.
Oils and smells.
Yeah. But tell me more about this playground situation.
Yeah, okay. Well, as I said on the weekend was at the playground, and it was made by sometimes I take a note of the different playgrounds. And I've been to a few over my time, and obviously if you have children, you spend a fair bit of time there, and I take note sometimes of the different manufacturers. And I think it's a brand called Compen.
Yeah.
And they've got some really interesting playgrounds, and I think it was actually Compen who the manufacturer of this playground that was referenced in a ABC News piece that was talking about this piece of equipment that, and for those who've seen it, those who may not have, it's essentially like I
know exactly what you're going to refer to. Yeah.
It's like this.
Yeah.
How could you say it? Like
it is like a lever.
Yeah.
Where I guess the idea is transporting you from
one side
platform to another.
And then in that action, and the person has to land on this other platform on the other side,
holding onto the post the entire way to deliver you over. Yeah,
correct. And there were some people going, "Oh my gosh, this is like, how could you do that? It's so unsafe." And other people going, and I think one of the families that were interviewed on there were saying, well, my son likes really risky stuff, and this is allowing risk to be taken, but in a safe way. And I think when they actually spoke to the company, they said, look, we like to push boundaries in a safe way, and we have restrictions, and we have specifications that meet standards.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking about risky play and what would be, would that be considered risky play, and setting up environments that are risky. And I know, our national director, Dino, is a huge advocate of you have to allow an environment, you have to allow a young person to take risks in order for them to learn through failure.
Yeah.
He has always stood by the fact that I will set things up that look risky, but I've got safe spaces in there, or they can fall. And if they do fall, they're going to fall and it's safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the falling part is such a big part of the actual activity itself.
Totally.
Like, I don't expect him to have, or them to have, success all the time. I want them to be able to take that risk and go outside their comfort zone. And I guess the question here came from, in a public space such as a playground, what's that balance?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, there are, I guess, a lot of elements, and I understand where those restrictions come in, but having those opportunities to play and use things in different ways really supports that problem solving and that planning in the movement and trying to adjust your body positions. And we often say in the clinic space, falling's how our bodies learn. So you're so right. You want to have those opportunities to fall and not quite get it right, but to land in a way that's safe. We've got, quite fortunate in the clinic, we've got plenty of things like protective matting and crash mats and all of that kind of stuff, and have some pretty firm, work health and safety considerations to be applying in the spaces to make sure that even if we are taking those risks, we can do so in a way that's safe. But I completely appreciate in other spaces that's a lot trickier to achieve that same kind of outcome. But then we also run the risk of making things too safe without those same opportunities. And then, in terms of what that supports for development and building those sensory motor foundations, that really shifts what that looks like.
So when I looked into this a bit more, there was just a bit of research that came up around, and it was this divide between risk not being, like, risky play and not being reckless, but then also this rise of risk aversion. And we talk about, helicopter parents, not, all that sort of stuff. And, sometimes I feel that's I don't like that term because I don't necessarily think any parent's necessarily a helicopter parent. I think each parent has their own level of comfort, and those that may have more anxiety for whatever reason are going to jump in more and just need some guidance as to it's going to be okay, you know. And I think sometimes it's they cop a bad rap. When really, I think a lot of the time they're just caring for their child.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? So,
it's only coming from a place of wanting to make sure they're safe and okay. And
absolutely.
That window of tolerance for how to extend that just looks a bit different.
Yeah. So that balance of like what's risky play, and I think you mentioned it before about, risk doesn't need to be reckless, and there's a difference there. And look, the thing is, for a lot of our young people, even in the therapy space, we have a lot of young people that come through here that impulse control is a huge factor, like a really big challenge for them, and they're still working through that and how to find and how to manage their body in a safe way and take risks in a safe way. And there's a lot of research that says if you do that from early, then those people will have less risky behaviors as they get older. You can look through any developmental works around those who are shielded from taking risks from a young age are more inclined to then push those boundaries or not know what to do.
That makes so much sense.
Particularly in teenage years when they're posed with, okay, what do I've never been exposed to risk taking before.
Yeah.
And, like we say all the time, you can never be too young to be exposed to some of these things and scaffold in the right way. So play, I think, is a really, playground settings are a really good way of encouraging young people to explore things in what I would say is a developmentally challenging manner. If you set up an environment that does afford risk, that is fine, because what's going to happen is the people that want to take those risks will, and the ones that are more risk averse probably won't go to those pieces of equipment. Yeah. And, I guess when you're thinking of a public space, obviously there's challenges of I've gone to this piece of equipment and I've got hurt here, who's liable, all those sort of things. And I think that certainly can understand that. But unless we are setting up environments that do afford a level of challenge, then playgrounds will be homogenous. Things will get very, very same. And, we've talked in the past around, and I think we even talked about in one of our earliest episodes, pods with Dr. Suzanne Smith-Rowley around kids being less willing to be involved in physical activity or take physical risks because of, generation changes. And if you create playgrounds that don't afford that opportunity, you're creating, inadvertently an environment where people are not going to want to take as many physical risks. Yeah,
absolutely. And I do get that reduced exposure that has maybe been an outcome from some of those shifts in approaches does mean that, there's maybe less opportunities for risky play. And I guess why we're saying it's important when you're thinking about building those sensory motor foundations, when something doesn't work out the first time around, we're having to problem solve through that. We're trying to understand, well, what worked about what I was doing, what didn't work, and what should I adjust for the next time? Because if we attempt something and it doesn't work, and it maybe includes a tumble or a slip or, that kind of feeling of, I didn't quite get that. Your body gets so much feedback in that movement about how you moved and how it's supported within the task. And what we're trying to support here is those adaptive responses where we're putting all of that feedback together and we're adjusting the approach to hopefully see that competency increase with each attempts that follow. And if we're just keeping things in these really safe zones that, it's a simple path forward from A to B and we're not really extending and challenging those skills outside of this very prescriptive space, then the chance of building upon that and really honing those pathways in the brain and in the body just changes a lot.
Yeah, and we've talked in previous episodes before around brain wiring, and the more divergent the wiring of the brain goes, the more different parts of the brain light up, the more different synapses fire and wire, and all those aspects of neuroplasticity come into this. And when we're young, that's the best time for these things to be developing and to be forming. And I think, if everything is too predictable, too easy, too same, then that leads to boredom. And then you've got another challenge there where you have to find ways to extend kids. And I think that's where, and we do it a lot in our therapy, we look for those child-led opportunities. And so, yes, I guess coming back to, why taking risks matter, and it's about building confidence, resilience, assessing risk, being able to understand those skills. And we see people once a week for 45, 50 minutes, but playgrounds where lots of kids spend a lot of their time. And I think it's really important that we have environments that can afford risk and can provide opportunities for, building physical confidence. And we talk about it all the time where we've worked on stuff in session. The parent goes, on the weekend they went to the playground and they did this, or they went on the ride at this, theme
the best,
park. And it's fantastic. And that's exactly what you want to see. And if everything is quite, as I said, homogenized, or the opportunity to take those risks in public spaces is greatly diminished, then you can't build on those skills as much. There's not as much natural opportunity.
Definitely. And then I think, like you said, just leads to more of those things. We're less confident in physical movement. We might be more avoidant. We prefer to keep things within our comfort zone because we haven't had the same level of success and opportunity in doing things that sit outside of that to extend upon that and find that just right challenge in our day-to-day activities.
The rise of risk aversion stuff certainly leads me to the number of schools that would have swings.
Yeah, that's
now that they don't,
really
and
true.
I think it's a risk. There's fear of blame or litigation, particularly in say in a school environment that stops those things from being set up.
Yeah,
and like I can understand that, but at the same time, it comes down to a design for safe risk. Now, I know our National Director Dino designs therapy spaces. And whenever he's doing that, he's always considering what is a safe way to take risks. And how do we make, whether it's safe landing spaces, how do we make heights effective and all those sorts of things. And I know
the flow of the space too.
Correct.
Yep. I've actually been on site with him at a school previously where they were exploring, well, what could we do to transform this outdoor play space? And, we actually spoke about swings because, and probably the same with things like trampolines, you're just seeing less of that as well. And even though they're just so brilliant for supporting that processing of movement and building so many of the skills that we often refer to in our episodes. And he was saying, well, if you were to have a swing in a school space, you have it set up in a way that, there's kind of one way in, there's one way out. You're considering the flow and the movement and the circulation space to minimize the risk of some of this, unexpected things that might occur and still providing the opportunity in that environment. And I really get that it's a balancing act and perhaps takes a little bit of extra thought and planning, but I think with that right lens, there's certainly scope to include this a little more. Yeah.
And the benefit of, say, in terms of designing spaces, the benefit of natural elements, and I know there's a lot more natural playgrounds that are built, which is excellent. Kids don't climb trees as much as they used to because maybe they just don't, or people fall and they don't want to.
Or they might be redirected from that being, be careful, don't climb that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah. And look, again, I don't want to discount the fact that trampolines can be unsafe, of course. But anything can be risky if it's not undertaken in a way that is supportive or is set up unsafe, as you said. Like if an environment doesn't have the right circulation space and someone could get injured, or if you have a trampoline and there's maybe there's no netting around it, or if they jump off, there are no mats or something soft to land on. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think when we're thinking about that risk benefit lens, we're certainly trying to find a balance to make it as as safe as is necessary, but also understand that if it's, as I said before, if it's too safe, then we're losing the benefit of the space itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just that chance for imagination and creativity, I think, like you were mentioning before, when things look a certain way and it's a bit more prescriptive in how you use that, which is where these natural play elements come in, because we can bring on that imagination and I guess create a world around that a little bit more freely. But I guess when it comes to, supporting increased risk, I think a really important point is not making things a free-for-all with no boundaries and things that you're, you just go for it. I think supervision's a really huge part of risky play, and, getting involved as well, or being on standby and knowing that you can help them problem solve and work through that. They can still figure things out themselves. It's not about jumping in, but you're still you're still there to support and you're still there to make sure, is this within the realm of what we all feel comfortable with? Is this within the realm of what I think they're actually capable of having a level of success in, even if it's a bit tricky to start? It's, risky play isn't also about extending so far beyond a young person's capabilities that it's risky because it's hard for them, but they're actually still building the building blocks that they need for that to be successful. So I guess assessing what that risk looks like, putting the things in place to make sure that we can still access it safely, even if it is something that's tricky, and the supervision component to make sure they're moving and using it as they need to, and you can jump in and be ready to spring into action as needed.
That's interesting because we talked about it before, about one of our pet peeves is when, someone says, they come into our space and they're engaged in our equipment, and yes, some of our spaces are very dynamic and there's lots of movement and there's swings and trampolines, and it's very akin to, say, a play cafe or a bounce or even a playground. Yeah. And people say, we don't need to come here, we can just do it at the playground. And I think the key point you mentioned there is supervision. What an OT does is they're constantly assessing risk. They're constantly assessing it in a way that goes, I'm not going to take the risk away completely. I'm going to risk assess and analyze and go, actually, I want you to take a safe risk here. I'll set that up to be safe. So that you're able to get the feedback you need, but learn, as opposed to we go to bounce and there are, 14, 15-year-olds just watching, making sure that the 300 kids that are in there are all in a space that's okay.
Totally.
But some kids are able to then take that and go, I know what to do. And there's a whole bunch of kids that don't know what to do. And the reason there are so many, and they're great places, don't get me wrong, but the reason there are so many injuries and things that happen there is because there's not the effective level of control and supervision for things to go, that's beyond your skill set.
Absolutely.
Or that's going to cause something more serious. So, incidents happen here. We have risks. That's like anything. You're going to have that happen. But that balance is, as we said from the whole thing, that balance is really important, and supervision and the right approach to it does change a lot of the success for that young person.
Absolutely. And I think that, when parents mention that about the playground, I really understand where they're coming from, because what they're seeing is a young person play like they would in those environments too, and there's probably lots of joy and it's very child-led and all of those sorts of things. And I can see how that's, if you're not working with someone that's really explaining their thought processes, what they're working on, how they're grading activities, as OTs working in this environment, the clinical lens that we're providing in any moment and matching that art with the science like we talk about, to have a look really, I guess we often say when parents are like, but aren't you just playing, which we've spoken about before, then we know we're hitting the mark because there's flow and that young person's engaged and it's doing something of interest. But the things that are going on behind the scenes is so much more. And I think part of that and this risky play element is assessing what the just right challenge is. So, when I think about a playground, you access that pretty freely. But in an OT session, we're going, okay, we might be starting with a swing like you have on the playground, but I can already see, right, what are the elements I'm going to add in? How can I grade this up? What are your goal areas? How can I target that in this? Whereas it does look, I think, really different on a playground. I saw a little person this week actually who accesses a kinder gym, and I've taken my nephew to the same one. And I just, being in that space where there's just so much equipment everywhere and talking about the supervision piece, like it's just, for those that are adventurous, there's plenty of things to do there. For those that maybe that's a bit more overwhelming, they'll find their safe pieces to go to. And where I think OT sits so differently is meeting every young person where they're at and extending and to aim to build that confidence. So even for someone who's more avoidant, providing safe opportunities for them to move and shift their comfort zone will hopefully mean that broadens and you see that shift in other spaces too, like you were mentioning earlier. So I get the perspective, but where I always see that is like, well, that's an opportunity then to really explain what I'm doing and why, so that you can certainly see the difference, but then pairing that to be like, well, here's how when you do go to the playground, you can extend some of the things that you're doing there if you're interested in doing so to build out towards those goal areas.
Yeah, well, I think in summary, it's important that we do have a level of risk, but be aware of that, find that balance, and really be able to know how we can best supervise in the right spaces. Yep. And as you said, you might come to an OT session and learn something and then take that into the playground space. And that's exactly what we'd love to see. So, I think the final thing is if we remove all risk, then kids don't know how to assess risk.
No, that's so true.
And it becomes a much harder picture as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of those then, because they don't know how to assess risk, the risk taking becomes greater because they don't have the foundation to know, well, how do I know what's too much for my body? How do I know that's not the best way to use something? Yeah.
We were mentioning last time about new grads and people starting work and some tips, and we ran out of time last week, but I thought we could spend a little bit of time today talking about some tips and tricks for new grads.
We've had a few people who are sort of finishing their studies and have, reached out for opportunities to shadow, which I think is an awesome thing to do. So definitely one of those tips, which we've spoken about in previous episodes. If there's an area of OT that you're interested in as a student who's finishing up, reach out to some organisations, ask to come in and spend even a few hours just to see what it's actually like and get a feel for if that's going to align with your interests, your values, and what you want to see in your new graduate year. But with some of the people that have come through, I guess what sparked this conversation is like, well, what are we kind of looking at? Because that's, it's a mutual opportunity there that for someone else to experience what that workplace looks like. But then for those coming through as, a potential employer, we have the chance to, get to know those people coming through a bit, see what some of those skills that might align with what we're looking for. Yeah. And, there are certainly some things that I always make note of in potential candidates. Do you have things that you look out for when people come through?
I do. First thing is, are they a natural kid magnet?
Yeah,
so
I love that phrasing.
The kid magnet term is so good. I love kid magnet because you will see the potential, therapists or those who just have this natural affinity to work with kids in a playful way, and kids are drawn to them. They invite them into the play. They're able to see that this person is going to support me here and is going to actually listen to what I say and be collaborative. And I think that's where the kid magnet stuff happens, is that they're getting down on the ground. They're doing things. They're getting involved, and not in an overbearing way.
No,
it's in I'm playing with you. I'm not directing your play.
Definitely.
I'm playing with you, and we're equal players, equal partners in this play. And
definitely.
And you do see them every now and then that come through. And look, it's something you can obviously build, but there are those who, if I see that straight away, I'm like, okay, that person.
Yeah. You are so right, though. Skills. I think for some people, it's a muscle that you need to build, like any other skill that we refer to in the workplace, which is something I've probably come around to a little bit more recently. Like I would have maybe earlier on thought that was, that's the key thing you're looking for. The rest we can build out in terms of clinical understanding and that kind of thing. But actually it is just a skill like anything else. But seeing a natural interaction style when it comes to young people, it doesn't have to be over the top and playful. I've seen people with those kid magnets who are just these gentle, calm presence, and that's what draws kids in, and they can lean into the play, but they do it in their own way. I think I can speak for both of us. We're both can certainly be very involved and vocal and really excited within those play activities. But being able to then also be calm and centered can be really engaging too. But I think it's just what you're really referring to there is how kids respond to their style, whatever that might look like. Yes. So I really like that phrasing around just being a magnet for the kids and seeing how young people respond to them. I was going to say too, I really like someone that is just willing to give things a go, not only in terms of the activities, but afterwards I like to have a debrief about what we worked on and why, and I might throw out a question to see how they respond to that. And I can immediately tell the ones who are maybe feeling a little bit anxious about that response, and I'll go, okay, so we're probably not going to do much of that. But some people come through and they're super keen to like give it a go, even if they don't know their response, and maybe they might not even get that right either. But I really like to see that, and I think to someone who's willing to give it a shot. And even if they, I might look at that and go, oh, they've got a pretty solid clinical foundation. But I think for me, it's more the willingness than it is the actual answer.
I think, and to add to that, I think the willingness to just say something or put it out there and it not maybe be the right response.
Yeah,
but to be like, yep, this could be completely wrong, but I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
And okay, that's fine. And then to be able to take on feedback. So I think the biggest thing for me is when maybe someone is willing to jump in, or maybe someone's not as much, or someone maybe is very open to being curious or asking questions, or flip side, maybe they're not. It's being able to take on feedback and be able to have things in place where they can affect a change from that feedback.
Yeah.
And, giving feedback's not the easiest thing to do, but like anything, the more you do it, the easier it is.
Yeah.
And the more important you realise it is for the people you're with. So I think if you've got that ability, and through uni you'll get that to some extent, but it's only when you start going to the workplace you get that really direct feedback about your performance actually working with this person. Looks like this, and it's not like you can't do it. It's just I want to be honest with you to build your skills.
Yeah.
And if you can take that as a thank you for helping me, as opposed to
I've done the wrong thing.
I've done the wrong thing. Why'd you say that about me? And it goes back to, our CEO, Michelle, talks about open feedback culture, and something that's really big here, but certainly something that I think as a young person coming through, if you have skills or ways to take on feedback and ways to then enact a change, that's going to help you regardless of what field you're in.
Definitely. And I think that always reminds me of a phrase that I learned actually from one of our allied health assistants here, which I've, ever since she mentioned it, I just reference back to all the time. I just thought it was awesome. When it comes to these things, it's an opportunity, not a challenge. I think if you have that growth open mindset, that's a complete shift. So when you're referring to feedback, it's not, well, I've done the wrong thing. There's an opportunity for me to do something differently and to build my skills and be better. But I think, I know that you might not necessarily see that in a shadowing opportunity, but if you were to reach out and go, hey, why don't you try that for this person, and they're actually able to take that on board and give it a shot, I think that's pretty cool, which probably just leans into a point around initiative.
Yes.
Generally, I had a lovely person shadowing the other day and they'd go, I'll bring that crush mat over for you. I'll get this for you. I'm like, oh man, that's, not essential, but that's awesome. And I think this probably shows a genuine interest and curiosity and shows a capacity to pick up on cues and then try and implement that as well. So
I'd say that was one thing I was shocking at in early days when I was younger, was that I just probably came across as this whatever sort of approach. And people were like, I was like, they'll hire me because I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, I'm
and they're
chill.
like, no, they're not. They're not going to, because you're not showing initiative. You're not showing that you actually care or want to be there.
Yeah.
There's no genuine, interest in it. And the other thing I'd say, and one of the other big things, is obviously our therapy and our organisation has a sensory integration approach. If you have an understanding of that, that's great. If you read up about us or you read into sensory integration, you come with this knowledge.
Yeah.
That and it doesn't have to be. For us, it could be any employer, to understand about the space and how they came about, and understanding more and more about the organisation and what it means and the fit and all those things. That rings so true to the people who might hire you, to go, this person not just likes, working as an OT, they believe in what we do.
Definitely.
And the why as to why we do what we do. And that's I know it's a big part of what we do here, but certainly I think for anybody looking for work, if you want to work at a place, get to know more about them.
So I thought we threw out a lot of things there, but if you are a student who is looking to maybe explore shadowing opportunities, some things that you might consider when you're doing that is, be yourself in those environments, but be willing to maybe put yourself out there and lean in with your natural interaction style with, we're talking about the pediatric space, but I guess with any of the clientele that you might be working with. I suppose the second really key point is just showing that interest and curiosity, be willing to offer responses, activities. I think leaning in with what you might know about that organisation, because I think about us here. If someone was to come, I understand you work in an sensory integration approach. Can you tell me more about that? I'd be like, awesome. They've at least had a little read through and they want to know more about it. And I think it's like a third takeaway point.
Bit of feedback, being able to take on feedback and being able to have systems to manage how you take that on and affect a change.
Yeah, but probably even just actually the main point here is when you do shadow, yes, there's an opportunity for you to gain that information, but there's actually more than anything an opportunity for you to put yourself out there, treat it like a job interview.
Absolutely.
And show that space who you are and what you're working towards and what it could look like if you were part of that team.
And be on time or a little bit early.
Yeah.
That's pretty important.
For sure. Good things to consider.
Excellent. Well, hopefully we have some of those people come through our organisation, and if they're listening to this podcast, that's a big tick. I heard you guys have a podcast. Oh, hired.
Do you know someone put that on their resume the other day? They're
I hope we hired them. Should have. But yes, lots of things there to consider. And as we mentioned earlier about playgrounds as well, keep an eye out for that. So, any parents going out there looking at playgrounds and going, is that risky enough? Have a chat, work with your child, do it collaboratively and you
Love
can
it.
make some changes
Sounds
there
good.
as well. So yeah, for any, again, questions, we always like questions. So if anybody does have any they want to send through, as we mentioned at the top of the episode, podcast OTFC group, it's the email or OTFC group on Instagram. And we will answer those that come through. And any final thoughts or?
Yeah, just chuck in an AU at the end of the email address and it'll probably make its way through to us.
True, yes. Maybe that's what I'm not doing. People are just sending it without the AU. The AU is
it's already a confusing
True. Yes.
email address.
Yeah. Otherwise, quick shout out to Fletch.
Hope you're having a good day.
And that's it.
See you around. Thanks, everyone.